afternoon, July 7th, 2025 Charlottesville City Council meeting will come to order. Ms. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Councilor Oshrin?
Here.
Councilor Payne?
Here.
Vice Mayor Pinkston?
Here.
Councilor Snook?
Here.
And we received prior notice that Mayor Wade would not be here.
Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second?
Please cast your vote.
Yeah, voice vote.
Oh.
Still logging in?
Right. It's logging in.
Voice vote?
Yeah.
Aye.
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 Yes.
Good evening. This meeting will be divided into three sections. First, a work session to hear and discuss presentations that do not require council vote. Second, followed by a closed session. And then finally, the city council business meeting at 6:30. We'll begin this afternoon with the FY25 climate program update with Crystal Ritterwald and Emily Irvine presenting.
All right, good afternoon, Council. I'm Crystal Rittervold, Director of the Office of Sustainability, and I'm joined this afternoon by Emily Irvin, our Climate Program Manager. Thank you for having us here today, and I'd like to start by appreciating everyone who's doing climate work with us and around us. Our climate program is part of the city's sustainability commitments that are reflected in the work of many different city departments, several of whom have been here to present their progress with you over this past year. As a reminder, we're working with the goals of achieving a 45% reduction in our community emissions by 2030, just around the corner, and we're aiming for carbon neutrality by 2050. These goals were understood to be ambitious at the time of adoption, but they may not be ambitious enough to prevent the worst effects of climate change. To be honest, we're here today with some mixed feelings in a shifting landscape that I want to lay out before you before we launch into the action report update. So last July, we celebrated City Council's investment in climate work, including substantial capital funding and expanded staffing to deliver a program. Through tonight's presentation, you will hear about a variety of projects and initiatives that would not have been possible without that investment. Projects are happening in municipal operations as well as in the community, projects that address various source sectors of our emissions, the built environment, transportation, and waste. An increasingly important and cross-disciplinary project focused on climate adaptation and resilience planning. Having identified the climate-driven risks and hazards for this region, we are determining strategies and actions to minimize harm and to make our communities strong, safe, and healthy in a changing climate. Last year, we were encouraged and excited to find community and momentum in the climate action work with colleagues who sought to align their work with the city's climate goals, with peers from local governments committed to tackling climate action at the local level, with partners, advocates, and experts who are in this with us, supporting us, bringing informed insight to us, and holding us accountable. Last year, we were inspired by unprecedented federal investments being made and anticipated in a clean energy economy. We were buoyed to see the recognition of climate justice and equity and inclusion as part of the expectations to do climate work in local communities. We were working with federal funding directly tied to projects in our FY25 work plan. This year, we are reeling from threats and realities of our federal government stepping away from climate leadership, undermining commitments of a clean energy transformation and a decarbonized economy. We see projections of energy demand outpacing energy production, and our electricity utility has stated that it is challenged to meet the requirements of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which mandates a transition to 100% carbon-free electricity by 2045. Virginia continues in a legal dispute concerning its withdrawal from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI, the regional cap-and-trade program designed to reduce carbon emissions from the power sector. Charlottesville has reaped direct benefits from that program, and just last week we received notice of another funding award through the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. This year, we're being impacted and are trying to adjust to the loss of federal funds through termination of grants and other funding that was to support community-based organizations involved in our Resilient Together project, support the development of an updated and a comprehensive citywide urban forest management plan, support our participation in a national learning group focused on climate-driven extreme urban heat in order to identify relevant coping strategies, and supporting partners to deliver climate-informed programs and services. Furthermore, the recently passed federal budget reconciliation bill curtails clean energy initiatives with significant modifications to the Inflation Reduction Act, including incentives that were going to be available for tax-exempt entities like local government. That bill terminates incentives for electric vehicles and efficient appliances. It phases out tax credits for wind and solar and other clean energy technology. It ends investment in vulnerable communities disproportionately burdened by pollution, and it establishes new and expanded support for fossil fuels. This year, we have watched and heard from friends and colleagues experiencing climate-driven crises: Hurricane Helene, the Palisades fire, flood damage and loss of life in Albemarle County, this week's historically disastrous Guadalupe River flooding, and Tropical Depression Chantal that just hammered North Carolina again last night. We cannot pause our commitment to climate work as politics play out. Climate change is a threat multiplier. As stated by the author Ayanna Johnson, we are in a stage of figuring out how to minimize the damage, how to mitigate the impacts, and how to adapt to this unknown world, while ensuring that those who are already marginalized and struggling aren't placed in more danger. We submit that we need to double down on reducing our contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, actualizing resilience strategies, and operationalizing climate and sustainability in our government. While we're here to do an annual update, I want to remind us that climate work doesn't fit neatly within discrete fiscal year boundaries. We're working on foundational and programmatic initiatives, and success will depend on the ability to deliver these, some of these, such as the Energy Resource Hub, as an ongoing effort. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Emily, who will share with you a summary of the climate work that's been done this year and what's on the horizon for this coming year. And we'll both be available for questions during and after.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, Crystal, and thank you all so much for having me. I am pleased to be back before you again this year for our second annual Climate Action Update. So Crystal, I think, already set the context that we're working in, but I do just want to underscore that even though I myself do feel so disheartened and disappointed by what's happening around us, I do think it really underscores the importance of this work at the local level, and so I'm grateful for all the support that you all provide for us. So I want to figure out how to change slides. So for today, I'm going to be giving you all an update on our most recent greenhouse gas inventory, and then I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about our Resilient Together project. I will update you on what we've accomplished in the past year since I was here before you last year, and I will give a little look ahead at what's on the horizon.
Environmental side.
What was that?
No idea.
Okay. So there will be time for questions at the end, but if you all have any clarifying questions that you need answered, please just feel free to jump in. Okay, greenhouse gas inventory update. Okay, all right. So under the commitment, under our city's commitment to the Global Covenant of Mayors, which council signed on to in 2017, we do an annual accounting of our greenhouse gas emissions. We are 1 year behind our reporting year because of the time that it takes for us to collect the data and everything when the data that we need for our inventory becomes available. So this, we're talking about our 2023 calendar year when we're talking about this most recent inventory. So as promised last year, we are aligning it with the release of our annual report. And so there's a lot more analysis and information about this in the report. But you can see this is a chart of our most recent inventory, which is inclusive of municipal activity. So this is our community-wide emissions data. So in 2023, our community released about 276,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. That includes carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. That is about 2% more than in our 2022 inventory year, but still 40% less than our 2011 baseline year. So these two pie charts present emissions by source, showing this year compared to last year. And what I want you all to take notice of here is that sources of emissions are starting to shift a bit. So if you focus mostly on the dark blue and the green wedges, the dark blue is our buildings and the green is our transportation. So you can see that emissions are starting to decline from our buildings and they are increasing in the transportation sector. And so we know that that 2023 pie is slightly bigger than the 22 pie, and that increase is very much driven by the increase in emissions from the transportation space. So if we look, this is our emissions by sector by year, each year from our baseline. It's a lot of data on this one slide, but if you compare 2022 to 2023, you will see that in every sector except transportation, emissions are either right about the same or less, but then in that transportation sector, we're seeing about a 20% increase. And so then if you compare our 2023 transportation emissions to 2019, you see that they're very comparable. So that's telling us that we are back up at a pre-pandemic level of transportation and travel in the community.
While you're on this, could I just ask you, what are the component parts of the transportation and mobile sources number? Is there one that went up particularly in the last year or two?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. So
Okay.
we get that data from VDOT. It's vehicle miles traveled. And so we saw an increase in the, pretty big increase in the percentage of vehicle miles traveled. And we also saw a pretty big increase in the percentage of diesel vehicles that are being used in our community. And so those two things together are really driving the increase.
And is that based on diesel sold at Charlottesville gas stations, the service stations?
No,
or-
so it is like a snapshot of, it's complicated, I'm not exactly sure. It's state level data that they extrapolate down to the local level. I could share our data sources with you, but.
I'm just curious, I'm mainly curious, aside from the intellectual curiosity of it all, is what lesson we might learn from the fact that there was a 20% increase in a number that is itself aggregated.
Right.
And if we disaggregate it, maybe we can learn something. And the question is can we learn something from doing so?
Yeah, we have on our to-do list for this upcoming year, doing a deep dive into our inventory process, and we get the same data from the state every year, but I do think we need to dig in if the state is doing something different that would impact our data. But this is the best data we have, and these are what the numbers are showing us. And I mean, I have to wonder, is it because we're doing so much delivery? We have a lot of you see a lot of diesel vehicles driving around.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
but I will talk a little bit in detail about that. But
Or I
good
get an
question.
answer in 6 months. I wanted to ask a
Right.
question
Yeah.
and pique your curiosity.
Yeah. So this chart shows municipal emissions, so from the activities of the city government, year over year by sector. So you can see that our municipal emissions have showed a slight decrease in all sectors from the 2022 inventory year, and that we are now down to 41% of our 2011 baseline. We do see the greatest reduction in our stationary sources, which includes buildings and lighting. So we're really pleased to be seeing this trend, especially because since the adoption of the Climate Action Plan, we've really been working across the city to really ramp up emissions reductions in our operations, and you all will hear about plans to deploy energy efficiency programs across our city's building portfolio and solar installations and things. So we're pleased with this trend at the municipal level. Okay, so this may help address some of your questions, Councilor Snook. So I want to talk about some takeaways from our inventory. So many communities don't do an annual inventory. It's kind of a big and tedious undertaking. But one thing I do like about the commitment that has us do this annually is it really does give us some insight about what's happening and what we need to do and where we should put our resources and energy. So here's some high-level takeaways. So like I mentioned, our overall emissions are up slightly from 2022. We saw about a 3% decline in emissions from buildings, but that was totally offset by this 20% increase in emissions from transportation. Like I mentioned, we get our transportation data from VDOT in the form of vehicle miles traveled, and between 2022 and 2023, we saw a 14% increase in those vehicle miles traveled. And then also I mentioned that it was 20% increase in diesel-fueled vehicles. So I think that this really underscores the importance of both working to reduce vehicle miles traveled by getting people out of their cars and onto the bus or bikes or the sidewalk. Let me finish my thought and then I will. And also increasing vehicle efficiency through electrification. Yes, Councilor Schwinn.
When you say 20% more diesel-fueled vehicles, does that mean?
Light-duty trucks that are powered by diesel.
Okay, so and that means, like, if we had 100 vehicles to start with, there's now 20 more diesel fuel trucks, or of that original 100, 20% more of them are diesel. What is that 20% of?
So of the pie of vehicles, we saw a 20% increase in the percentage of them that are light-duty diesel trucks.
Okay. So not necessarily more vehicles overall, but of the vehicles out there, they're more likely to be light-duty
That's a good
diesel
question.
trucks.
I have to peek back at our data to see if it's that granular.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
On the building side, the cleanup of the grid, which means the grid is becoming less carbon intensive through installation of clean energy, that's really helping to drive emissions down in the building sector. So we saw a 7% decrease in the emissions intensity of electricity in our region just since 2022. And on a per kilowatt basis, emissions from electricity are down 45% since 2011 in our region. So this really underscores the importance of building electrification and energy efficiency for our homes, our businesses, and the city's building portfolio. Okay, before I move on from this like technical information, do you guys have any questions? Okay. So our Global Covenant of Mayors commitment also, we are compelled to report our emissions accounting annually also. And we use this platform called CDP, which used to stand for Carbon Disclosure Project. They are a global nonprofit that supports many businesses and cities across the world, including about 160 cities in the US, to publicly report and track their emissions. So that's the platform we used. You'll notice that the reporting year is 2024, so the same as like this report to you all, and I report on our 2020, our most recent inventory, so that's why the years don't match up. But so in this last reporting cycle to Global Covenant of Mayors, we earned a score of A-, which is the same score that we earned previously. So we're pleased with that, and we have retained our badges that help us know that we are in compliance with our commitment. All right, so for this next part, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about the Resilient Together project and of the importance of climate adaptation and resilience building work that we've been doing. So when we talk about climate action, there are really two types of work, or two pillars of work that we talk about. So one is mitigation, or reducing our greenhouse gases, and so getting to the source of the problem. And the other is adaptation, which is preparing for the changes that climate change is bringing and will bring more of in the future. So this is reacting to the symptoms of the problem. So our climate action plan is mitigation focused. And the Resilient Together project, which will result in a companion adaptation plan, is resilience and adaptation focused. So for the past 18 months or so, I have spent a lot of time talking with the community about our regional climate hazards and risks. But I haven't really yet spoken with you all about them yet. And so since we are aiming to bring a climate adaptation and resilience plan forward for adoption in this fiscal year, this seemed like a good opportunity to talk to you just a little bit about this work. And I think understanding the risks kind of underscores the timeliness and importance of doing this resilience building work. So in 2022, we conducted a risk and vulnerability assessment to help us to understand the impacts that we expect to see in our region. And I think that when you are looking at this slide, I feel like it's safe to say that all of you can probably understand and think of the ways that we're already experiencing these hazards in our region. And we know that as the climate continues to warm, these impacts will become amplified and continue to be more impactful on our community and the systems that support us, including our ecosystems. So I can and often give an entire presentation on the details of our regional risks and hazards, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to breeze through this, and I'd be happy to come back at the end or find another time to talk in detail about what the hazards and risks are. But you saw in the slide deck, I do have a slide for each of our hazards. So we expect to see much more extreme heat in the future. I think of this as sort of our most chronic climate impact. That is related to the data shows us that we will see increased number of consecutive dry days, which causes drought. We also expect to see increased intensity of precipitation and more instances of flooding. I think flooding is on everyone's mind these days. Altogether, our seasons are changing, which have these knock-on impacts of making us more vulnerable to the pests and diseases that are both endemic to our ecosystem here and also from other places. And then, of course, we experience more smoke from outside and are at higher risk of fire as well. So just as a reminder, the Resilient Together project is our adaptation and resilience planning project that we're doing collaboratively with Albemarle County and UVA. So when I was here last year, we had recently launched the project, and we're in the process of sharing information with the community about the hazards and risks. Those I just breezed over with you all, and also learning from community members about how they have been experiencing those hazards. And fast forward a year, and we've done a lot of engagement, both in the community and with staff across all three organizations. And we're nearing the end of our design phase, is what we're calling it. So we've been refining our resilience strategies that are appropriate for our community, and then getting ready to start drafting the plans. And so I do think it's really important to note here that this project has been impacted by the cancellation of a federal grant. You all may remember when I was here last year that I was really excited to share about our climate resilience cohort. We had secured funding for that piece of the Resilient Together project through a $460,000 environmental justice government-to-government grant. And the plan was to pass most of those funds through to local community-based organizations to help us to engage vulnerable and hard-to-reach community members, and then also to provide seed funding for community-led resilience projects. So we went through an application process, and we selected 9 organizations that are working to serve our community to be sub-awardees and partners with us in this project as members of the cohort, and we were getting that work underway. And then in March, Albemarle County was the prime applicant on this grant with the city as a primary partner. And so in March, the county received a notice of cancellation and a subsequent stop work order. And so as you all can imagine, that's been very disruptive and been a big setback for this piece of the project. We have managed to continue to support cohort members with local funds, some from Albemarle County, some from our Climate Initiative Fund, but to a much lesser degree and for the planning only, not for those implementation projects. So I really want to give a shout out and credit to all of the cohort member organizations. They've all been so patient with us and really supportive of continuing to participate in the project, even though it is a hardship on them. And we're disappointed because we were excited about working with organizations like sort of in this new way. And so it's been challenging.
Just one quick question. I know separate from this process in the city's hazard mitigation plan, flooding and extreme rain events were highlighted as the biggest kind of hazard risk for the city over the coming years. Is that accurate, and is that what this process has kind of found as well, in terms of, has there been any kind of like triage of like they're all bad, but which of these is kind of the greatest risk for Charlottesville?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, they're all bad, and some are acute and some are chronic. Some will be more localized and some more widespread. I feel like it's difficult to pick which one is worse. I will say, with our regional hazard mitigation plan that the TJPDC leads they're the convening organization for that plan. They are required in the next update, which will happen a few years from now, to take climate risk and vulnerability into account when making that plan. And so my hope is that because we will have been through the Resilient Together process and we will have a plan as a city, we can really be really useful to that process and to help other communities who aren't quite as far along as we are, and to really inform what's in that plan going forward. I have no idea what's going to happen with that process with what's happening with FEMA, because that's a FEMA required plan, and you have to have a plan to be able to apply for grants through grant programs that are being canceled. So I don't know what the future of that looks like. I'm really having trouble with this clicker. Okay, oops. Okay. This is an image from a recent Resilient Together Community Design Night. This was one that happened at Greenwood Community Center out in the county. But these were facilitated workshops based on human-centered design principles, and where we helped community members to think about what preparedness strategies would look like in their neighborhoods. We had a series of these, and we also, I'll just say that we have a kind of do-it-yourself conversation kit that we are asking folks to, if they are interested in facilitating resilience conversation among their friends or neighbors or colleagues, we have extended our input deadline for people to do those kits on their own, and they're available on Resilient Together's website. So now I'm going to turn back to the Climate Action Plan and the mitigation side of our work. And of course, there's a written report that you all received that accompanies this presentation that has way more information in it than I have time to talk about this afternoon. So I hope everyone will skim that. And so for now, I'm just going to give an overview of some of the initiatives and projects we've been working on. So first, I'm going to talk about the work we've been doing to reduce energy use within the city's operations outside of the transportation space. So the first 5 bullet points on that list are all related to reducing emissions from our city's building portfolio, which you all know includes our school buildings also. So last year, when I was here, we talked about having gotten a master energy performance agreement in place. That was a kind of a long time coming. There were energy audits that had to be done on all the buildings before that could be put in place. And so now we have that mechanism in place, and we have completed the first project under that agreement, which was the replacement of energy. We put in energy efficient HVAC units to some critical IT facilities or equipment. The second project is currently underway, and that is the installation of a 262 kilowatt solar installation on the roof of K-Tech building. So the installation of that system started in June and will be completed this summer. And that will be the city's largest solar installation to date, which is pretty cool. And then the third project under that agreement is under contract and will be lighting, plumbing, and HVAC updates here in City Hall Annex, and at Key Rec. So that will get started later this year. And so, like I said, all of these are done with the guidance of those energy audits that were done with the guidance of those technical energy audits that were done as we got this mechanism into place. So these big projects are one thing, but staff from the Office of Sustainability also partners with Public Works for our energy and water management program, which works to conserve energy and water within our city building portfolio through regular operations and maintenance best practices. So that's an ongoing program as well. So I mentioned the new solar being installed at K-Tech. This year, a solar system was also installed on the new bypass fire station. That is a smaller system at 31 kilowatts. But it's expected to cover about 40% of that building's annual power needs. And so these systems were both installed through our city and schools solar fund, or solar program, and so the city owns both of those systems outright. And so this picture that's with the slide here is some staff from Public Works and the Office of Sustainability visiting the system before it was put into service. So the next item on this list, power purchase agreements, is also related to solar. So large solar systems, even though they pay for themselves over time, with utility savings, have a very large upfront cost that's often difficult for the city to manage. And so a power purchase agreement, or a PPA, is a long-term contract where a third party installs, owns, and operates the system, and then we commit to purchasing the power at a pre-negotiated rate. So we're currently reviewing proposals for PPAs for CHS and the new Charlottesville Middle School once it's completed. And both of those big roofs could accommodate systems in the neighborhood of a whole megawatt, so that of 1 megawatt. So those are large systems. And so this is a model that many localities and school districts use, including our friends at Albemarle County. Also related to buildings, last year I talked about our high performance building standards project that got underway this year and is currently in progress. This project aims to consolidate and formalize current best practices related to facility design, construction, renovations, and operations and maintenance. So many of these are practices we've been operating under for many years, but we want to formalize them and standardize them. And so when these standards are complete, we will also update the city's green building policy, which was originally adopted back in 2008. Moving away from buildings, we're working on the LED streetlight conversion project, which will convert all of our Dominion-owned streetlights in the city, which is most of them, to LED. This project has a relatively quick payback period, And an interesting thing to share about this project is we've had a lot of community interest in it because lighting can have a negative impact on the ecosystems around if it's too bright. So Charlottesville, along with some other localities who are also working on this project, have been working with Dominion through our Virginia Energy Purchasing Governmental Association group that we're a part of. The municipalities who purchase electricity have like a group to work with Dominion. So we've been working with Dominion to expand the range of options available to us so that they will offer through their program lighting that is more conducive to what we're looking for and has a lower light intensity. And so that's been an interesting thing about this project. So another kind of cool thing that we've done that people always enjoy hearing me talk about this year is we worked with Parks and Rec to pilot electric landscaping equipment in some of their operations. So the downtown mall crews are now using electric leaf blowers, and we supported getting the first electric zero-turn mower into Parks' fleet. The results so far have been really positive. Crews, we've been trying to work with the Parks and Rec crews who have gotten the equipment, and they report really liking the electric equipment, and it meets almost all of their needs cases. And so we actually have quite a lot more equipment sitting in our office for delivery next week. Some electric string trimmers, electric chainsaws, more leaf blowers. So that's been very successful so far. It's been a good partnership with Parks.
And what's nice about that too is electric landscaping tools tend to be a lot quieter.
A lot quieter.
So it's
Yeah.
good for the neighbors in terms of noise pollution, not
Yes.
just air pollution.
Yes, exactly. So this last item on this list here is a little bit wonky, but I'm kind of glad to share about it. So this Energy Demand Response Program is offered by PGM, which is our regional grid operator. And so when energy demand is really high, for example, on a hot day like today, where everyone is running their air conditioning at the same time, large customers like the city who are participating in the program may be called upon to reduce their energy use slightly. And so this takes some of the strain off the grid and can help prevent brownouts and blackouts. And so there is a financial benefit to the city for participating in this program. But it's kind of also just being a good grid citizen. So folks who are really following this space, demand management is going to be an increasing part of meeting our power needs in the future. And so the city's being really proactive by participating in this program. And I'm glad we were able to get enrolled in it this year. So just a few little highlights from this sector. Here's a shot of Chief Thomas cutting the ribbon at the new solar array at the Bypass Fire Station a few weeks ago. And here is Matt and Josh, who are our skate park staff, who were welcoming our new electric zero-turn mower. That was back when it was still chilly outside. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over and talk about the sort of comparable work we've been doing within the community. So I didn't show our community emissions profile at the beginning of this like I sometimes do, but I'm sure all of you remember that about 95% of our emissions come from the community and our homes and businesses and things outside of city operations. And so doing this community-facing work is a really big an important part of our program and reaching our community-wide climate goals. So after nearly a year of planning, in March, we partnered with Albemarle County's climate program, LEAP, and C3 to launch the Energy Resource Hub. You all know the Energy Hub is both an online and an in-person service to help our community members navigate and access the many energy programs offered by both utilities and state, local, and federal government. And the hub is available to homeowners, renters, and business owners at all income levels in both the city and Albemarle County. So since its launch, the hub has connected over 120 community members with information and resources available to them based on their age, income, or their home. And of those community members served, we have data that about 20% of them have reported taking action of some kind, either by scheduling a home energy audit accessing a program or taking advantage of a tax break. So it is hard to get that follow-up data from folks. So since this is so new, we felt pretty happy with a 20% conversion rate. And so the Hub's Energy Navigator, who is there in the middle with her thumbs up, her name's Rosina, she regularly holds office hours and is out in the community trying to increase the visibility of the Resource Hub and help raise awareness about the Hub's services. We've also been working on complementary programs to sort of shake hands with the Resource Hub. And we have a few programs like that that are administered through LEAP. The first is free home energy audits for low and middle income community members through the second round of energy efficiency and conservation block grant funding. So we received a $76,000 allocation through that program, and we are happy to report that thus far those funds have not been pulled back, and we've been able to continue with this program, and many folks are taking advantage of it, we're glad to say. So people come to the Hub, and then people are able to get a free energy audit to inform them of the services that they need through this particular program. And then the other new initiative that we have is funded through our Climate Initiative Fund, and we're calling it our residential retrofit program. So community members who have received an audit are eligible to receive up to $2,000 per household for heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, weatherization, electrical improvements, or a few other efficiency measures. And so this program was originally designed to bridge the gap between now and the arrival of the home energy incentives that were part of the Inflation Reduction Act. It's still TBD whether those will ever come. And so it may just be the program for Charlottesville residents. We're waiting on that. So of course, our utilities department also works with LEAP to administer a suite of energy efficiency programs specific to gas customers. Those programs were expanded this year based on some recommendations from the decarbonization study. And so those programs are accessible to community members directly through utilities marketing efforts, but also through the Resource Hub. So we worked with our utilities colleagues to make sure those are all shaking hands together. Before I move on, I do want to take a moment to sort of acknowledge how fortunate we are to have LEAP to support our community this way, and C3 also because they're supporting the Hub on the commercial side, helping our businesses. But the Hub is only possible because we have these local nonprofit partners to deliver these services. We have received a lot of inquiries from our peer jurisdictions really wishing that they had a Resource Hub. And so I just want to give a shout out for our partners in delivering this service to our community. So lastly, before I move on also, in October, we were able to opt into Virginia's statewide commercial property assessed clean energy or CPACE program. And so that is a clean energy financing tool for commercial building owners to access low cost and long-term financing for energy efficiency, renewable energy, resilience, high performance building, things like that. And so we hope that having access to this program will help support developers in choosing to build high performance buildings in our community. On the left here, this is just another sort of action slide, but on the left here is an image from the homepage of the Resource Hub, and then on the right is a screenshot from our website dashboard, and that really helps us to understand where the Hub traffic is going, where people's interests lie, and you can see that we are getting really high engagement on a pretty wide range of topics that are on the Hub. So I'm going to pivot to transportation now. And municipal and community-facing actions are both listed here in the transportation slide, just so that's clear. So CAT is moving forward with their transition to zero emissions buses. The first 2 battery electric transit buses have been ordered and are anticipated for delivery next summer, so summer of '26, with another 2 battery electric transit buses planned for delivery in 2027. the planning for the first round of charging infrastructure to serve those buses is complete, and then the installation of that infrastructure will be completed before the arrival of the buses. And then, of course, you all are aware that we also have a hydrogen fuel cell pilot planned for further out for 2028, and so CAT and Office of Sustainability staff have had multiple conversations with clean hydrogen producers and Virginia Energy, just sort of exploring what that could look like. So on the school bus side, 2 electric school buses that were funded through EPA's Clean School Bus Program have been ordered and will be delivered later this year. We are participating in Dominion's school bus charging infrastructure program, and the planning and engineering for those is complete, and installation will be underway as soon as some of the parts arrive. There was concern that these funds would be pulled back because they are federal funds, but the city has received the promised rebate, and so the money is in hand, and we are guardedly optimistic that the next round of funding will be honored. We have applied for 2 more buses under that next round, and we'll see what happens. So last year I shared that we were kicking off a community-wide EV charging infrastructure study that would examine our future charging needs and help us identify priority locations for charging. That study is now nearly complete, and it also includes an analysis of the city's light-duty fleet and may inform development of a clean fleet policy, and will help us definitely assess our infrastructure needs so that as we get more electric vehicles in the city's fleet, that can be successful. So shifting to bikes, we partnered with NDS this year to launch the e-bike mini grant voucher pilot program. We've so far had 2 rounds of that, and the 3rd quarter sign-up period is currently open. It opened July 1st and will be open through the month of July. And this has been a really popular program with over 1,000 folks signing up each time. So this program provides 25 $1,000 mini grants each quarter, and they're redeemable at any of our 3 locally owned bike shops for the purchase of an e-bike. E-bikes are a great alternative to cars in a small, hilly city like Charlottesville. And we also understand that even though $1,000 is a very generous contribution towards an e-bike, it's still not enough to help some of our lowest income community members. So we are currently working with Human and Social Services to design a more inclusive program that could help a wider range of community members be e-bike commuters. So, of course, the city continues to invest in improvements to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, as well as working towards the implementation of our ADA transition plan. So everything that we do to improve pedestrian infrastructure and make it easier for people to choose to leave their cars behind is climate action. So that is all related, and we're grateful for that work. And I, like I mentioned, with this recent increase in emissions from the transportation sector, I think it really underscores the importance of that work. And before I leave the transportation space, these facts surprise me every single year, but so VEO continues to serve our community. So in 2024, we saw over 250,000 rides, covering more than 300,000 miles in our little 10 square mile city, which I think is really cool. And they did a survey of local users, and 78% of people reported that having access to the scooters helped them to use their car less. And in fact, 17% of folks who use the bikes and scooters in Charlottesville don't have a driver's license, so it is helping to fill an important need. So some action shots from this sector. This is a photo of one of Albemarle County's electric school buses. It is a Thomas Julie, and that is the type of bus that will be joining our school bus fleet later this year. This is a photo from our electric vehicle showcase that we had a couple of weeks ago. The bus was at the showcase, but is not in the picture. So this was an event we co-hosted with Albemarle County and UVA. It was kind of mostly aimed at organizational staff to help folks understand the range of EVs available to them, but we had buses and cars and also some smaller utility vehicles, and we had a good turnout, and it was really hot that day, and we cooked hot dogs on an electric grill that was plugged into an electric vehicle, which was kind of a nifty thing too. So this is a picture from the e-bike demo day that we had back in the spring. Many of you all will remember how fun it was. This was back in the spring, and again, it was mostly aimed at city staff, but we are having another one, I think next weekend. At
12th.
Tonsler Park, yes, at the Parks and Rec Sunday.
And the rain
Sunday.
date's the 20th.
Okay, great, thank you. So this event was so fun. Everybody who got on a bike came back smiling.
Even I did,
City
that's
Manager
correct.
Sanders, I'm looking at you.
Back smile.
Yes, it was great. So this is a picture of the new Ford all-electric e-transit van that joined Public Works' fleet this year. So this is a utility van that is currently assigned to one of the HVAC crews, so keep your eyes out. Keep your eyes out for it around town. The only thing that really makes it easy to tell is on the grill, there's like some blue decorations that indicate that it's electric. So now I'll talk through what we've been working on in the nature-based solutions space. So last year, I reported to you all that the city had received a $150,000 USDA grant to support an update of our urban forest management plan. And this year, although much of that work has been completed and the project was underway, that grant was also terminated. Many parts of that project are complete, so the canopy assessment and the on-the-ground vegetation analysis and our street tree inventory, but the team who's been working on this is trying to figure out how to bring the project to completion and what parts of the scope we can continue under that loss of funding. So Parks and Rec has continued its ongoing program of tree planting and invasive species management on publicly owned land and in rights-of-way. Nearly 200 trees were planted in fall of 2024 and spring of 2025. And then this fall, there are plans to plant about 150 more trees. And in addition to planting those new trees, our urban forester is also very focused on restoration of existing forest through invasive species management. That's a program he started just a year or two ago, and so this year those active restoration efforts were expanded onto 22.5 additional acres of city property, and so we're now working on invasives management on about 43 acres of parkland, which is great. And so, of course, we know that invasive species are not just an issue on our publicly owned lands, but also on private property. So a really cool thing that was like a bonus item from this year was this year's staff from Parks and Rec and our Office of Sustainability worked with local conservation organizations who are already interested in invasive species management and working on invasive species management to form a new umbrella organization called CHIP, the Charlottesville Invasive Plant Partnership. And so CHIP works at the neighborhood level to train citizen volunteers to fight invasive vines on private property. So between September and June, CHIP launched pilot programs in the Kellytown and Little High neighborhoods, and they would go into a neighborhood and make connections with the neighborhood leaders, do a neighborhood walk, and do a tree survey. They would do invasive identification trainings, teach folks how to use tools and safely remove vines, and then go in and have work days with neighborhood partners. And so far, they've removed vines from over 200 trees in these two neighborhoods and have plans to continue doing this work across the city. And of course, our utilities department continued their very popular Energy Savings Trees initiative this year and expanded the program so they give trees away twice a year instead of once a year. So this is a picture from one of the CHIP work days. You can see our urban forest manager, or urban forester, Steve Gaines, there in the middle, and he's teaching folks how to safely use tools and identify invasive vines. All right, coming down the home stretch. So I'm just going to talk about sort of a sampling of other work we've been doing this year to further climate action and resilience building in our community. So we continue our composting drop-off program and are working to expand that to more locations. We do a fair bit of community education and outreach to help community members to understand their role in meeting our climate goals and just to raise their level of awareness about the work that we're doing. So here you can see Crystal at a community event. I think maybe this was Kidvention back in April. A few other highlights of the year include our Climate Cafe series. That is a collaboration with C3 where we have a bi-monthly sort of meetup. It's on the second Friday at the Bradbury each month, and we highlight a specific sustainability topic and invite a featured partner to join us. So the next one of those will be on August 10th at 9:30, and the topic is going to be transit and mobility. Those have been well attended and folks seem to have enjoyed them. We also refreshed our climate action guide, which I put one at each of your seats before you got here. That was a fun project. We updated that this year, and we expanded it to include resilience instead of just adaptation. So another thing we did this year was we launched our Working in a Sustainable Environment, or WISE program. And so that is an internally facing employee engagement program to help city staff integrate sustainability into their everyday work. And we've done a lot of relationship building and held a variety of events this year, including a plant swap. We did an extreme heat first aid training session a few weeks ago, the EV showcase. So we're really working to engage staff from across the city organization. So also, as directed by our climate action plan, we participate in state-level policy and regulatory activity that would have an impact on our local sustainability work and goals. So this year, we offered comments on the State Corporation Commission's proposed amendments to the rules around shared solar, and we also offered comments on the large utilities' proposed integrated resources plans. And then currently, we're working on participating in a second amicus brief for the ongoing lawsuit related to RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. We're working with a few other jurisdictions to write a collaborative, to submit a collaborative brief. And so also, even though our adaptation and resilience plan is still being written, we can't ignore that work, and so we support a lot of resilience building efforts. Most recently, we've been really focused on extreme heat safety and awareness, and we've been working to get educational resources out into the media and into the community to help folks understand how to keep themselves safe in this extreme heat we've been having. So just a few action shots. This is a picture from one of our climate cafes. Like I mentioned, they've been really popular and well attended. Topics have been electric vehicles, invasive plants, extreme heat, solar. The next one is on transit and mobility. This is Alex from CAT. We partnered with CAT to support the bus rap art contest. So we invited community members to submit their original sustainability themed art to decorate some of those naked buses that you may have seen running around town. The submission window just closed on 4th of July, and community voting is open. So we invite community members to vote on their favorite design, and we will have 2 winners. And so we will hope to decorate 2 of those buses before too long. This is Ben from NDS and Matt from Economic Development at our WISE Earth Day Plant Exchange. This was a fun employee engagement event that we had to help folks know what we're doing here in the city on sustainability. This is Jill and Kirk and myself, all from the Office of Sustainability. This was delivering climate action kits this year. So this is a partnership with C3 and the Discovery Museum, and we expanded that this year to bring these climate action kits to all 4th and 5th graders in the city schools, and so they're full of activities for the kids and also information for parents about the resource hub and energy savings, and so they're fun and also a useful way to connect with community members. And we were really happy this year to be able to offer the kits in 4 languages, so English, Spanish, Dari, and Pashto. All right, so looking ahead, this is the final section of the presentation, and so I just want to spend a few minutes talking about what's on deck in the new fiscal year. So the first thing I want to say is that I just want to be transparent about it. We have fewer new initiatives on our new updated work plan than we did last year. And I don't really think that that is a bad thing, because this work is hard and deep, and it really is going to take these ongoing programs and projects that do take kind of a long time. I think it's indicative that we are settling into the work of implementing our climate action plan. And so we have quite a lot of these like ongoing initiatives that are underway that we're continuing to work to support. So of course, one of them is the resource hub. So the infrastructure of the hub is built, and we're working with our partners to really expand access and awareness and connect more community members with the resources provided to them. So I also mentioned the new K-Tech solar system. That's being installed right now. We'll go into service later this year. And we're really working to land these power purchase agreements to put solar on our 2 biggest roofs, Charlottesville High School and Charlottesville Middle School. So with the new bill that passed, I do think it's important for us to consider the potential implications of the tax credits that are being phased out. And how that could affect this opportunity. So that is yet to be seen. And sort of a fun and unique thing that we're working on related to solar. So CHS used to have solar panels, and they were taken down for a routine roof replacement. So we still have all of the solar panels from CHS. We don't want to put them back up because the technology has changed a lot. That's a really big roof. It needs like the most high efficiency new panels on that big roof, but we are exploring whether or not we can repurpose those old panels onto other like parks buildings and stuff. So that's an interesting thing that we're exploring. So we are on track to bring you all a climate adaptation and resilience plan this fiscal year. I hope that that plan will be drafted and ready for public comment around this winter. I've already mentioned we're bringing our first electric school buses into the fleet this year. We've done some transition planning around that effort also to, so that we have, we've been thinking about what a fuller bus transition will look like. So we've been doing that work also. We're getting ready to embark on these big energy efficiency projects here at City Hall, next door at the Annex, and at Key Rec. And we're also working to expand our e-bike program to help a greater number of community members access that. All right, I think that is all I have to say. Thank you all so much. Crystal and I are happy to answer questions.
Any questions?
On the last slide, it says repurposing of CHS solar panels from original project.
That's what I
What's
just,
going on?
so that's where I just mentioned. So CHS had a solar installation that was done in 2012.
Okay.
And so those panels needed to come off for roof replacement. And it's important to put new panels back up. That's a big roof. The technology has evolved a lot since then, but we're exploring how we can repurpose those old panels into other smaller installations. So maybe like on parks facilities, for example.
Are they as efficient as newer ones?
They're not as efficient, but they also still have some life left in them.
Okay.
So,
I must have missed it when you came through the first time.
yeah.
Thank you.
Questions down here?
A couple. So with the federal legislation ending the investment tax credits for solar, what's kind of the practical impact for our rooftop solar projects? And, it sounds like we'd still be able to move forward with power purchase agreements for those, or is it kind of like, what's the scale of disruption for kind of that work?
It's a lot of disruption. I think it's our hope that the bypass fire station and the K-Tech project will be completed before the window closes to be able to pursue the direct pay, the 30% tax credit that would be available to the city. Clearly, the private sector that does power purchase agreements is looking at a window of time in which projects have to be initiated in order for them to be able to access that same traditional ITC. And so we can't sit on this for, 18 more months. It's probably something that has to happen significantly sooner. I think we're also concerned that just standard residential solar deployment is really going to take a hit, because if individuals can't take that 30% tax credit, it really changes the numbers. I've heard concerns. There's a really big Inflation Reduction Act funded program called Solar for All, where all of the funds that would be managed and deployed by the state are intended for low-income solar. Well, there's two questions. One is whether some of that ITC, the credits that were baked into the model, change what was being done, and whether the eligible recipients change because of some of the other modifications to programs.
And for the city being able to deploy as many of those solar initiatives as possible on our end, is the barrier for being able to do that within that time frame? Is it more money, or is it more just like the number of staff people available to kind of just take on that practical workload?
Well, I think there's another third really big limitation, which is eligible roofs that are really, like, we don't want to put solar on roofs that need to be replaced in 3, 4, 5 years. And so we really don't have that many. And that's why the two that we just mentioned that are complete and in progress are perfect, because they're brand new roofs. And then the conversation about power purchase agreements is about the next two biggest, newest roofs that we would want to target. And after that, it really becomes significantly smaller projects that we can continue to approach as a cash-funded, owner-financed approach that may not be good PPA candidates.
I guess somewhat relatedly, because, related to the recent federal legislation, obviously the city had put a lot of time and effort into the zero-emission buses program, which I think was important. I remember in C3's the research, for each diesel bus to break even from an emissions perspective, it needs 9.7 riders on average. We're at 9.5 riders on average. We're at 2.7 riders right now. So we're nowhere close even breaking even on emissions for each new diesel bus. Obviously, it was made financially feasible because of the significant amount of money available through the Inflation Reduction Act bipartisan infrastructure law. My understanding is most hydrogen projects are essentially killed. We would be basically extremely unlikely to see a hydrogen hub actually built out within the time frame before it's phased out here on the East Coast. All of which to say is that obviously changes both on the hydrogen side and even the battery electric side, how we do this initiative, kind of what might it look like for us to strategically plan around that and say, we're not abandoning this, but we're kind of trying to think strategically, how do we phase this in or deal with it in bites without just abandoning the whole concept, in case maybe 5 years from now, maybe there's a different administration and some of these investments do come back.
There better be a different administration.
Well,
For term limit purposes.
Yeah, I think your last comment might be where I would have started, is that planning for fleet transitions like this is a long game, right? And so if some of the incentives or the tools are pushed out by a number of years, we shouldn't give up on the planning work, right? Because still the infrastructure work and the cost work and how to pay for it and how to operate it and all of that, is still work that I think is a good investment of time and effort. And we have said from the beginning that a zero emissions transit system with no passengers is not a climate solution, right? We still have to deal with reliability, with safety, with expanded service, all those things that get people on the bus. Even that initiative, focusing on that in the near term, is going to make the final carbon footprint of a zero emissions bus fleet better.
Definitely, and I definitely hope we don't abandon that planning, and at least if, from what I've read is accurate, it almost may be more feasible to focus on the battery electric side, for the next several years, just compared to I mean, the money to build out something as ambitious as a hydrogen facility is just not going to be there, in addition to there just being no regional hydrogen hub. The natural gas utility, so I think also with the federal legislation ending a lot of programs, what we do locally will matter even more. What would it look like for the city to transition the natural gas utilities carbon offsets paid to British Petroleum to local investments in some of this local work?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a local decision. I think it's a decision of the body of the utility to make directions and recommend alternative approaches. I think the carbon offset program was a proactive approach when it was first embarked on, and now we're learning more and we're seeing some of the opportunities, and I think it's a matter of being comfortable with what accounting looks like through a different type of platform or system or approach than what we have right now. I mean, now's the time to figure out what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we talk about is, should that be the directive, we stand ready to help come up with a program to spend those dollars locally. And I mean, with the dearth of funding from the feds, I mean, that could be a way to direct additional resources to us locally. And I mean,
Yeah, I totally support that.
Yeah,
What are the numbers? Do you remember how much we're paying?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it's a couple $100,000 a
I think
year.
it's like
it's about
250,000.
250
Yeah,
a year.
300.
And so, you know,
Yeah.
if you push all of that to help subsidize solar deployment, maybe that's a straightforward strategy where you can do the accounting, the projecting. But it's not just an easy overnight
Sure.
program
Sure, but
design.
I would
So-
love it if y'all came up with, like a proposal. for
It is on the agenda.
I figured it was.
Yeah, well, I definitely say I think the sooner we can just adjust that money away from British Petroleum offsets to local ones, the better, because it is, it'll add up to a pretty significant amount of money in the context of our budget. One final question, and then a few quick thoughts. The Charlottesville Regional Airport, do you have any engagement with them?
Emily and I do not.
I just bring it
The
up.
city has representation on the board.
Yeah, I think there's interesting opportunities there, both because obviously the plane traffic that come through there has a significant carbon impact. We also have a lot of extreme wealth in our community, and there's actually a surprising amount of private jets that come in and out of the airport. And as you mentioned, I don't know how many people in the community realize we appoint members to that body, and it's a public body. So I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities there, both with the amount of land they have for a solar array, as well as just what would it look like for them to also be part of the conversation on however it looks trying to offset their carbon impact. Just two final thoughts. I think, it's interesting how much we've advanced our local climate work when, the situation is what it is at a federal level, and just kind of trying to continue this work while letting go of being able to predict the ultimate outcome of what is going to happen at a federal and international level. Because of that, I think our emissions reduction work locally is extremely important, but it's almost like that resilience work is what's going to have the biggest immediate day-to-day impact on people's lives. And you referenced the flooding, and I've said this a lot, but I'll say it again. I think the city really has to change how we think about planning for flood risk and stormwater management. I think FEMA floodplain maps already did not reflect climate change. Certainly now, over the next several years, they're not going to at all, to the point where I wonder how much we can even rely on those maps as an actual useful tool of saying, oh, this is where flood risk actually is. Because I do think you look at communities like Asheville, Albemarle has had deaths in recent years from flooding. I think we're just going to take it for granted until we start to get some of these really extreme rain events, and then we're really going to regret having not systematically changed how we plan for it. So I think that is a critical goal the city has to take action on that I know involves a lot of different departments and is not easy, but that just really jumps out to me. And I forgot the last thought, but
Natalie?
Yeah, if you remember it,
Yeah.
tap in. Thank
Well,
you for.
I might just respond. The grant notification that we received last week from the Community Flood Preparedness Fund may help us tackle some of those, like proactive, intentional planning.
And
So, we'll
those
see.
are also topics that we're definitely talking about as part of the Resilient Together project.
Okay, thank you. There, even amongst the bad news from federal legislation and the pulling back of grants, there's a lot of good news in here, and I appreciate you bringing all of that to us and to share with our community. Clearly, you all are a great team doing a lot of good work, so thank you for that. My question is, Michael covered a lot of things, but my question is a little more internally focused. I know that the e-bike subsidy program that we currently have is excludes city staff. And we don't have any kind of alternative transportation incentive for staff members in the city. And I would love to see if we could explore, get together with HR or whatever departments we could bring into this. This was something that I know I've mentioned to leadership before, but I was also reminded of that this past week when I was talking with the mayor, that he's interested in that too. It got mentioned to him through someone else, that someone was like, oh, I can't apply for that. And he was like, what? So we were talking about that and would be supportive of some kind of program that we could incentivize alternatives for city staff, whether it's carpooling, walking, the e-bike subsidy, having a different pool that city staff can apply to. I think that would be a great way to encourage some internal sustainability efforts for the team, and hopefully other counselors will be supportive of that. UVA offers that to their staff, and we hear about it in our regional transit partnership meeting often, and it seems like a good and effective program, especially when space is at a premium within city limits. So something like that would be great. I know your work plan is already listed, but maybe that's something that HR does the front lifting on and you all review or something, so that we can expand that to city staff. And then going off of your comment about Cho and the airport, I know that airports get a lot of revenue from parking, and so they're not as inclined to put a airport on a bus route as other companies might be to bring people to them. And right now, MicroCat offers the public transportation option to access the airport, but that's for county residents, or you can get yourself to the county and then take MicroCat up to the airport. And that's something that obviously is more CARTA and CAT project, not necessarily sustainability, the Office of Sustainability leading that, but that's something that I think if we're gonna chat with Cho is something we might want to bring up as well.
I learned something.
Lloyd, anything?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious, looking at the chart that shows our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions, going down, 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 and then a little bit of a blip recently. Any idea of where the planned projects being implemented this year would put us? Are they going to, I assume somebody has figured out that, well, if all this works out, it ought to cause us to save X number of tons of carbon dioxide or something.
Well, so you have to remember, we only have direct control over our municipal emissions, which are about 5%
Right.
of that big pie. And so even if we are able to put all of our projects that are planned for our municipal operations into service, it's a pretty small dent
Okay.
in the big community-wide chart. Not that makes those projects any less important, but it just underscores, I think, the importance of the work we're doing in the community, which is much harder to predict.
I was curious about one fact. It mentioned that the Energy Resource Hub website has regular traffic and many pages have a very high engagement rate. Which one are the ones that have the highest engagement rates?
So if you
What
look.
are people most interested in?
So people, let's see, let me find my. People are interested in solar. Let's see. In one of the slides, I had the picture of our little dashboard. Is this it? Okay, so let's see. Homeowner services, really popular. Incentives, services, our new residential retrofit program, commercial services are getting pretty good hits. So we are working with a third party that's helping support some marketing for this, and they're tailoring some ads and things based on what is working with folks.
Good, okay. I was thinking of other things that we might be trying to do, and I'm concerned particularly about the ways in which, the ways that we have to sort of penetrate the residential market for folks who are not, among the most computer savvy people, for example. I'm just thinking, we know that people who are getting various tax relief from the city are likely to be among the people who are going to have the highest need for things like energy conservation measures, and the greatest cost of the portion of their budget is likely to be from folks like that, as opposed to folks who've already got all the insulation they need.
Yeah, so we do a mailing occasionally in the CHAP, in the rental relief program mailers, and it's probably time to do that again. That's Resource Hub specific. But yeah, we have been, I mean, it's so hard to break through to people in this like information overload ecosystem that we live in, and so we really are trying a lot of veins to get the hub and the resources in front of folks.
Okay. Those are just a couple questions I had.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're open to suggestions.
I appreciated the report, and I appreciated the presentation tonight. You all obviously have been working very hard. I know these are discouraging times, but we really don't have a choice but to keep moving forward, and so thank you all for doing that. I think that's all for now. We'll move on to the closed session.
Sure.
Thank you.
Please,
Thank you for
yeah.
having
Thank
us.
you to our team for
Yeah.
showing up too.
Yeah.
It's not just us.
The
It's
team.
not the Emily and Crystal show. There's a lot of people behind it.
Yeah,
Good to
thank
see
you.
you all. Yeah, Lloyd, if you'd read us into closed session, please.
Sure. Pursuant to section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code, I move that this city council close this open meeting and convene in a closed session as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. 1, under Virginia Code section 2.2-3711A1 for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be appointed to the following boards and/or committees: the Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority, CRHA. And 2, pursuant to Code Section 2.2-3711A7, for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual litigation, where such consultation would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, specifically White versus City of Charlottesville. And 3, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A8, for consultation with legal counsel for specific legal advice pertaining to matters involving the city's zoning ordinances and the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And I so move.
Great. Is there a second?
Second?
Please cast your vote.
It'll be a voice vote. Lloyd, we still need you to log in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I couldn't.
Okay, we'll be
Around
back at 6:30.
I'll come back and fix it.